So today lecture we have three sets of vocabularies, which is followed one by one respectively, starting from why China has to be involved with trade. We already know that. Come on, we want to make money more. Right? Make money, which is called the GDP. GDP can create the specific term called economic growth. So in this coming midterm exam, please precisely aware that the keywords of each question. So this is one of the keywords in the midterm exam. Student has to be able to understand and explain why trade. It's so important. He said, yes, it's important, but how? Right? How? So we need some more theories to back up. So I will keep sending, or even you can do some of the favor for yourself. Search for the theory related to the topic I have been taught. You don't need to promise yourself, because each question is worth 7%. So in this coming Friday, that will be the review session, review lecture for the whole total. Okay, midterm exam. Please don't miss. So don't tell anybody. And we're gonna have the review session and direct about midterm exam. Please don't tell anybody. Then you will see something happen on Friday when the rumors spread up into the. Or just a joke. Okay. So the distribution of income flow into many sectors. But today's lecture will provide you that who gain more and who gain less and who gain worse. So in international trade, it has a sentence can gain from trade. A gain or benefit from trade. Simply understanding, if you go to market, you have something for sale, right? Some people buy the products, you get the money. Both happy, both sides happy, buyer and seller. That's what distributions that I have been taught about. And welfare, you know the meaning of welfare. How those kind of money can be allocated. In what circumstance? So today the lecture will using the equilibriums, which is having two approach of equilibrium, partial and general equilibrium. Mostly when you discuss about the theory in economics, we focusing on partial. Right? So when you and me now in this classroom, we try to ignore something outside this classroom. If we involve with them so much, the world will be chaos. Right? We're focusing on you and me and some variable we call partial analysis. Make sense? In mathematics, I think everyone have the background in mathematics. When you start dy, differentiate of y respect to x, right? We call partial derivative of y respect to x. Make sense? By hold the thing constant. Okay? Why I keep saying this? Because in my explanation, please make sure that you're focusing on partial equilibrium. Up until I explain what happened outside. Then the general equilibrium moving. Long time ago, China is too partial, right? Not as big as now, but it's called closed economy. Right? dy by dx of China depend on the domestic. But this time, export is the main variable. Right? So, some question that I will put in the midterm exam, what is export-led growth model? Why China has been the period called export-led growth period? When explain and back up with the evidence. Here is a difference between partial and a general. I will use examples in the next slide, focusing on one or two products. Right? Probably steel or sneakers or clothes or t-shirt. That's partial analysis. But I cannot do the general equilibrium, it's too complicated by running the model. Because we have to put everything simultaneously change within the model. So there is many various market in the economy. The world without China. Have you ever heard this word? The world living without China. That's before 1970s. Right? So China closed the country. But the world cannot live without China. That means we have to pick China as under consideration as a general equilibrium. So that's why from now on, China is under the spotlight. Let me us admire our class. Can you study economics without studying modern Chinese economy? That's the reason. Okay? Because you cannot have 100 minus China or n minus 1. But China said, yes, we can live without America. We do not care about America. That was something strange in this kind of mechanism right now. So country A and country B, you normally see this kind of thing happen in the circles or circular flows. Good A and good B, right? X and Y, labor and a capital. Use these examples in my midterm answer. Assume X is what? Assume country X or country Y. You don't need to go like, oh, this world is very complicated and full stop. Right? The guy named Stubler and Samuelson, two people. They both contribute that the world, once you open trade and connect each other, the world will gain benefit from trade. That is called Stubler and Samuelson. How? The factor or input come from the influence of trade. What is China have the main influence of the world after its open 1980s? Why we're talking about now? We're talking about the importance of China. But China cannot go this big without what? Because we did not focus on my nation. Right? So it's not my responsibility. It's yours. Because I'm doing my job by telling you that the most important is you. Can this class without me? No. I am your labor. Right? I am your labor. This is the labor. This is the labor. The labor have been increased because trade increased. China cannot run the country without cheap labor. Can you explain? If I can explain, what theory that you have to? I already told you in class. Labor market. Demographic dividend. Right? Wage. Minimum wage. Did I distribute this material to you already? Absolutely yes. So keep that in the folder for sure that we talk about. So labor have more money, and then they produce something that's using a lot of labor. Do you have this? Yes or no? Are you kidding? I already distribute to your PPT.
No, didn't have this allowed.
That's why. So my fault. So you can please don't shoot me, okay? So kind of sorrow. So more than I think I did send. Oh, I could take paradox, right?
Yes.
Okay, I play around with this one, and I will send it later. So WTO indicate world economy. China step in. China produce, but the product that China serve the world is come from cheap labor, right? Cheaper labor, and the theory is called Stapler and Simonson. So I will show you in a minute. And since the labor, which is work in many factories along the coastal or region of China, has been hired more, so they have more jobs, more employment, more incomes. Okay. Tony, are you okay?
Yeah.
Are you alright? Can I ask you?
Yeah, sure.
What of you? We are now talking about world factory. Okay. So what you want to do if I ask you to explain by the world factory mechanism and what will be the most important factor for China to serve the world, and the world has been called the world factory. Huh?
Is that the question?
The question. Why China has been called the world factory? If you want to answer this as a midterm exam, what the theory you should explain?
Because
Cheap
Cheap labor. Right. So now we're getting on track. So cheap labor. Cheap labor, what happened to the product that using cheap labor? Cheap price. Then after the cheap price, what happened to China export? Increase. China get more buyer, which is called import from outside, right? The GDP of China increase. What happened to the people who work in the factory? Getting higher money and higher wage and higher welfare because they can have more money. And what happened? Why the government happy to see people get more money?
people not struggling to.
What is the variable that you can explain?
Yes. Second.
Government revenue, you pay tax. Right? So you see the variable that I try to explain that this focus is, it can be anything up to you, but don't lose the main variables. That's why it doesn't matter who comes to you and interview. Right? Using the variable. So government increase, but the money has to be sure that it has more money. That's why We need money or GDP. Tax can allocate so many people. And the standard of living of people increase. People have the biggest smile on their faces. We have so many pictures having, the Chinese people carrying like a colorful television brought them back into their house in 1980s. First time that the Chinese people having a bigger smile, which is after the world factory setting up. We may be not born in that period, but somebody who did not know that what is the television look like in a color, right?
Yes.
Think that you're blind because everything's black, but now it's colors. The structural gap happened between coast and hinterland. Okay, that's another problem. I move from trade to distribution. We have three variables to be understood. Okay, today. The distribution means who get more income. Coastal means the people who was on the right-hand side of map of China. Tony, which state that you're from? Which province, sorry? Zhejiang. Not south, east, west? South. Not south right here, right? Okay. The eastern coast, right, of China, which is along the way called coastal area. Am I right? Probably, we have so many. Fujian,
Around there.
Shenzhen, and Zhejiang was nearby.
Nearby Shanghai.
Right. Okay. You must be richer then. Because that is the area that have main SEZ, Special Economic Zone. Now in Thailand, which part of the region that have a higher per capita income? Nationwide. Phuket. That's from tourism. What about the products? What about the GDP per capita? Bangkok. Right? And surrounding. Surrounding like Samut Prakan, Rayong, and Nonthaburi, and some else. And because there was coastal area close to the Gulf of Thailand, all main ports. That's why everything that we order here has to be transported from a central part of Thailand. Am I right? Can you name the company in Chiang Mai that is not local? That's right, uncountable. I assume that there's so many. The closest is 7-Eleven. That's from Japan, right? iPad from America, Huawei from China. Even you from Myanmar? Yes, but in one dish of Pad Krapao, right? It's not 100% cooked by Thai people. Do you understand what I'm saying? Distribution of income has been spread out to the region, not Thailand. This is also happened in China. The coastal area, inland. Oh my gosh. Think about in Thailand, very far from the city. Maybe in China, I do not think that it was inappropriate to say that Yunnan is very far. But you may be somewhere in rural of Yunnan, okay, in the highland of Yunnan, probably. You're from Sichuan, you're from Chengdu. I used to watch the document that kids had to go to school by climbing, okay, a very high mountain, right? Probably you may have heard about that. You're from that village. Wow. Then I have the story too. May I use few minutes for some students from Thailand who did not know Sichuan. SUN. Just something. You know this guy for sure. Have you heard this kind of scene? They go to school. Think about you. You are far behind them, but they have something called school up there. It's emotional. So now, I think one province in China. You know about this boy? This boy was in Yunnan, right? In the rural area of Yunnan, but he has been called the icy boy because he has to walk, pass by the stove, right? Oops. Ice boy or icy boy? Okay, now you can think about inland wind. In the area that very far from the city, just like our, probably compared to some village in Maehongsong, or very far from Chiang Mai, or very far from Yangon or Mandalay, back in Shan State, whatever they call that. Get more money. That's it. Get more money, but less money in inland. Higher income in Bangkok, lower income in somewhere in the rural area. High skilled labor get more money too. It is 3 up to 4 theories that you can apply for midterm exam. The key word is, I already put that right in the previous slide that you just told me that I did not upload it yet. Stopler and Simmons, decoding the price impact on wages and rent. Let me focus on this. Let me focus on Stopler and Simmons. Just do me a favor, okay? Take some photos if you want. Okay? It is the slide that precisely show. I should give you first. Open to slide number 4. So everyone know about wage. A is a country. Let's say China. Country A. They may have country B or whatever country, but we focusing on China. Okay? You know labor and you know capital. You have to use this to answer my exam. Don't tell anybody. That's called theory. This is called input market. In the market, how many we have? Labor and capital. For China, which one that China has so large amount? What happened to capital or machine or technologies? Scale, right? Limit. Not now, but 40 years ago. 40 years ago. I have the reason to apply this for you. Because this is a midterm exam. Students have to be able to apply theory with the mechanism happen in China. So I said trade. Why we have trade? Because China have a lot of labor. So what happened to demand for labor after trade opened? Increased. Now you can say, oh, after China opened the country, demands of the labor in the market move to the right hand side. Okay? What happened to wage? Wage is the return of labor. What happened to? Increase or decrease? Increase by direction of the arrow. You may think that, Ajahn, you mentioned about demand. What is a 0? What is a 1 and a 2 mean? If the direction starts with 0, moving to 1 and shift to number 2. Okay, I'll explain you now. Does China has the machine back into that day? Does China has fuel, engine? Of course, but limit, right? Probably poor in technologies compared to the US in 1980s or 2000. China has own steel industry, right? Has its own mine industry, but technology is not as advanced as US. So we can claim that US has capital rich country, right? So America represents the country that have a huge amount of capital or technologies back into that day. So China should focus on trade originally by sending the product that produced mainly by labor because cheaper. So what happened to the US? The US also export the product that intensively produced by capital. Make sense? Can you name some of the capital from the US that's now becoming, up until now, export items? You also now using them. This is a US technologies, Apples, right? Boeing's, the plane, up in the sky, higher than the universe, the satellite system, right? The satellite technologies. I think not too many countries in this world can visit the moon, right? surprisingly, US claim that we are the first. Right? For visiting the moon, and then who else? Russia. Who else? China. Who else? India. India has a satellite system. Who else? Europe. That is advanced technologies. China is a latecomer. Why is Japan? Why not Japan? 2 bombs disappeared. No technologies, no wars. Bombs, we are now talking about a nuclear power.
But they under USA control. I think they can do. They just
That's what we back into that day means. Back into that day, China, it was still lag behind. So I was talking about an example of advanced technologies. That's what I said. Let's start with this because we're focusing on trade. But now it's coming, China is, a flying now is led by China. Okay? That's why China is no longer a cheap labor country exporter, but now very high technology exports. Right? Okay, I expect to get that answer back to you. Chinese labor had more income. That was the first mile that I mentioned that there was order many things, and even now they can travel abroad. Even now, you and somebody here can come and study. Even they went to the US, right? Buy the property over there. And because wage. And now you ask me that, wage in China is RMB, but in the US is US dollars. How can you mature? How can you compare $1 back into those periods, gain more money than now, gain more RMB than now, right? But now the bargaining power of China stepping up, and when it was still $1 comparing around 7 or 6 up to 7 RMB, right? Plus and minus like with the dot. Exchange rate. And the demand for capital in China moved to the left because China found that no, it's not worth to produce some of the machine and compete with China, but compete with the US. It's better to import, right? Import K, but export the product produced by them. So China export New Balance, Nike, right? Adidas, Puma, and import what? All right. Chevrolet, Ford, Caterpillar. You know Caterpillar? The machine from the US, right? Komatsu from Japan, and Samsung, Volvo from Sweden, and then learning by doing. Okay? And change most of the K combined with the L, turning from import into export. From what policy? This is the second question in midterm exam. I'm frankly, and I'm sincerely to you.
What's the question?
Don't answer that like, what's the question that you asked? Just. I said, after China export by using cheap labor, right? And China had been import a lot of the capital via Hong Kong, right? To Shenzhen, to Fujian, and so on and so forth. And up until everything was on set, what policy or what economic variables that China applied those to combine with export? From export, the K now from import to export. From import Caterpillar, tractors, cars, now China export the same thing. From export iPad, now China export Huawei. Right? Am I right? Huawei, Oppo, Xiaomi. That's more than iPhone now. What about the brand of Korea? Samsung, LG. LG almost disappeared. Where's Sony? Sony Ericsson. Where's Motorola? Never exists right now. Right? From Europe. Sony maybe from Japan. So Japan stopped producing hardware. Right? But China produced everything. Hardware, software, chips, semiconductor, EV. That's why we call global value chain has been totally stay in China. Or the world cannot live without China. Along the way of my teaching, and to want to make you that I have to do many homeworks together. So it has some statistics show the global value chain of each product increased dramatically from all over the world and until end up in China. So in China, that's what one guy said, we can live without US things. Make sense? Everything almost produced in China. So you should be proud about that. Right? But not everything that you're supposed to want. Even you get everything, but you still want to. Why we have so many Americans here? Why we have so many teenagers from Europe? Why they do crazy thing from Italy in Bangkok? Why we have to go to Italy, US, or New York Fashion Week? Because you cannot stop your demand. Right? Your demand, you did not stay in the same place. So I will talk about this after midterm exam. We call trade in services. That's why we have Lisa. That's why we have a movie from China now becoming on Netflix. Right? That's why we have so many something like Netflix from US, UK, and also Thailand also do the same. We call soft power. Just focusing on the K. The K return is R. What is R, student? Rent. Rent is return to the capital. Wage is return to labor. So who get the biggest smile? The owner of labor. And who suffer? The domestic, right? Capitalist suffer. Because there was demand less. Well, in China, who owned the company back into that day? Government. That's why they lose a big amount of money when they open the country and welcome Walmart, welcome iPad, welcome, you know IBM? Right? IBM. MIB, made in black. You know this company, right? So probably student may not recognize after you just here in the middle of my lecture. We are now talking about trade, distribution, and welfare. IBM is the in full form FDI. What is the FDI? Foreign direct
investment.
We learned it already?
Yes.
That is the second question. The first is trade. The second is money from abroad. Okay? They bring technologies. IBM from America. So actually America was happy at the beginning. The GDP of the US increased because they import a lot of the cheap product. Walmart is the big clients of many companies in coastal areas, right? What is slogan of Walmart? Have you ever remember? What is the selling slogan of Walmart? Everyday low price. Right? Which means the cost of producing low price has to be lower than Walmart. How many Walmart stores in China? I think some hundred or maybe thousand. Still, right? You have in Chengdu? Zhejiang also have Walmart. They have the other chains too, right? Like Big C. Something like Big C or Micro. You know Lenovo? Who owns this brand? Lenovo. If my lab rescan was right, IBM originally owned by the US. Finally, it was brought by China. It changed IBM into Lenovo. Because IBM entered China as an FDI. And the Chinese government allowed a laboratory like, yes, we can do some research. And now it's becoming the brand called IBM first, and sell in China. And after that, IBM had kind of bankruptcy or financial problems. Lenovo said, yeah, we buy it. That was story of IBM now turning MG, originally from British, now becoming Chinese. Okay. That's what the thing called takeover after FDI happened. So China moving from import FDI, and after that export FDI. That's why I mentioned about the third question in midterm exam. Remember the variables that I taught? Savings, right? Now you know GDP equals CIGXN. I start with X minus N. I move to saving, investment, and then capital, or FDI. So I already recorded in the middle. It's a witness. So you can repeat and watch it carefully after. But if you're lazy, just now, I have three variables. Trade, okay? And then later I'm talking about capital or FDI. And now I'm talking about saving. Saving increase, and then so huge amount of increase in saving, they buy the properties, they buy the stake, they buy the asset outside. China, in terms of the country, which is have a lot of labor, get a huge amount of money. How can you imagine that 1.4 billion, 50% gain more money? And if they spend only 1 RMB per day increase, right? That will be 700 million RMB increase, right? Because they have more money. So what happened to the GDP equation after they gain more income? More income, more consumption too. C increase, right? C increase is now becoming, 2006, has been the strategy of China called consumption-led growth model. They're moving from export into consumption. They encourage people to spend the money. Most of us from Thailand too. The government encouraged us to spend, right? How much per day? At least 200 baht per person. If the Chinese encourage each Chinese to spend 220 RMB per person for 700 million people. That's why you see what sector has been booming right now in China? Tourism. That's why it's open wide and welcome 30 days of your visa. Right? To support the local business and gain more money. Hotel, logistics, Chinese Airlines, right? Panda, Sichuan province. Oh, ni hao, all right. Studying, language, right? Scholarships. This start. Country B, US, now. Trade. Real report of advance factor increase. That's why the IBM or GM, GM, the General Motor, the company, Ford, what else? Chevrolet, and so many brands from US get more benefit because they move and invest in China. Automobile industry, right? Not only the US, but big car from Germany like BMW, like Mercedes-Benz, Benz, or I saw many fancy car like Porsche, right? Or Tesla, for example. Not now, but there was invest a lot into China back some years back, a decade ago. It was turned out that China have many vehicle brands right now, right? Even EV alone. You may think, what am I supposed to learn about this? Students, wake up and see this scenario possible. Is that possible to see wage for Chinese and American have the same rate? A wage rate per hour. Okay, is that possible to see $1 equal to 1 RMB? Is that possible to see 1 baht equal to $1? Maybe you have to born 30 lives to get, because you have to work 31 times to get $1. But China work only 7 times, right? Singapore work only 0.34 times to get amount. Because $1 equal to 1.34 Singapore dollar. So So you have to born in Singapore. Or move to Singapore. Yes, they can allow you to. But what is the first question that the government of Singapore will ask? Have you watched Jerry Maguire movie? Show me the money. Right, Jerry Maguire, Tom Cruise and Cuba Gooding Jr. said, show me the money if you want me to be in the team. Show me the money. That's why 100% of your FDI originally can set up the company in 1 hour in Singapore. You can open 100% of your ownership in Singapore. Singapore doesn't have any endowments or advance. So what Singapore have? In here, right? I said, not like a suicide, but human capital. Human capital that eligible to speak 2 languages but control the world, English and Chinese. Now you know why language is so important. Singapore controls 75% of logistics of the world. You have to pass the Malacca Strait by waterway, which is the cheapest cost of transportation of the world. All right, what is the most important of the world economy? What is the most important of the world economy? We cannot live without those items. And hint, it had to pass through Singapore. Oil. Oil. Every $1, 7.35 come from logistic costs. That's why Singapore made money from the price quote or reference price in Singapore of oil. So let's focus on FDI. Let's focus on savings. Let's focus on variables. So at the last class coming on Friday, I will provide you with a piece of paper called exercise. Once again, I provide with a piece of paper. You have to come and get a piece of paper. You said, but I can make a copy. Yes, but you have to sign first for me to get a paper. You get double, right? Class attendance and the guideline. So it's up to you to copy for your friends or not. That's why coming to my class is just like climbing the mountain in Yunnan. Because you already pay oil price. So my education is not free. Right, Tony? You already come, you have to get everything back home. So hopefully that is not boring at all. Thank you so much and enjoy the rest of the day. And tomorrow no class, okay?
Yes.
Oh, yes. Tomorrow no class, okay? See you on Friday.
วันแม่มาแบบ